We have our player who is able to move their ship by pressing the arrow keys on their keyboard. The next thing that we need to do is add in a challenge to this, and that's going to be setting up our bad guys, our bad characters. Let's create a function. We can call it setup bad guys, and then here we can specify how many we want to add to the screen at any given time. So let's add 6, and we do have a total of 10, so that means that there's still going to be 4 left that aren't going to be on screen. Setting up a function in order to handle the setup. We take the value of the number that we want to set up as a parameter, giving a variable name of num, then looping through x and create a for loop while x is less than num, and then we'll increment x by 1. And this is where we're going to actually make the bad guy. And this gives us more flexibility having it in 2 separate functions so that we can control how many we want to set up at any time, and that's how we can launch the function. So if we update this value, then this will loop through larger numbers or smaller numbers, and then the making of the bad guy is always going to be the same function. And we can also launch the making of the bad guy as we have more left, and as we remove them from the screen, we can add in new ones. So again, there's that flexibility when we're creating it dynamically, and the flexibility to keep all of the characters in play. So player and total bad, we want to make sure that this value is greater than 0. And if it is, then we are good to go. We are good to make our characters. So let's set up a temporary holder for that. And this is going to have our total bad value that's going to be contained within here, because of course this is going to be changing. And then we're taking our player total bad and we're subtracting 1 off of it. And we also want to update the score, because again, remember, we are updating one of the values here. So we're decreasing the number of bad guys. So we want to update the number of enemies left here. Now let's create them. So setting up a variable in order to hold our object that we're creating, using create element method in JavaScript, setting up and creating a div. I'll make this bigger, and then we'll run through the code in order to construct the element. We can update its inner HTML of the element that we just constructed, so giving it a value, and then this value can be whatever the value of temp is. So that's why when we track the value of temp and then we subtract the total bad, we could also increase that if we wanted to. Let's also take that element and class list, and we're going to add a class, and we'll give it a class of baddie that we want to add. And we also need to set that class up as well. We want to also give it an X and Y position, and using math floor and then math random, we're going to generate a random position. And this is going to be determined by the bound container width. So it could be anywhere on our bound container. And then we're going to subtract 100 off of that. And then the div y, so this y position, we can use math as well, so that they're not always starting in the same y position. And this one we can just multiply by 500. And we're going to multiply it by -1 because we want this to be a negative value. So we want it to appear the Y position off of screen, and then we're going to have that character moving down on the screen. We can also set up any other variables at this point that we need to utilize. So we're setting up a speed so we can travel them all at different speeds. In this case, we're going to use math ceiling, and then using our math random method again. Let's multiply that by 10, and we'll add 3 to it. So it'll be traveling at least at 3 pixels for each iteration. And then taking that element, let's add it to the main container object using append child, and that object that we are adding in is div. And then lastly, now that we've got it visible, we need to update its style properties. So setting its left value, and we can use div x, and also we need to update its top position. So in this case we can use div y plus pix, and then the div x and the div y are the values that we're going to be adjusting to create its animation and its movement. So let's also go up to our style and add some styling. So we created a class of baddie. So just as our main player object set its position to absolute so that we can move it around with the JavaScript, and we can set a height So this could be 100 pixels, width 100 pixels. And we could also adjust these dynamically as needed. Also setting some default positions for it, so top and left. Background color, so make them all blue for now. And we can adjust this with JavaScript later on as well. Adding in color, so set it as white. I usually like to use line height because it allows me to center the content, and then text align center. So I think we're ready to try that out. So let's go ahead and hit start. And you can see now they've all got added to the page, and there's actually more than what we see on the screen, because remember, some of them are completely off the screen. So we've essentially generated 6 of them on the screen right now, and then we've got still 4 that are hidden. So we're going to output these, and we're going to start to move these in the animation frame. So we're going to do that in the upcoming lesson. And as you can see, all of the top positions are already set now within that container. And we might want to adjust this to be even a larger value of at least -200, because we want to make sure that they're completely off screen. And then this one over here that was left -72, we got to make sure that it's at least 0. So I'm not sure why it ended up being left -72. So let's take a quick look at our code and just make sure that things are proper, where we're actually subtracting the 100 off of the width. And then let's add in another 50 into it. Or we can just add in a condition. If div x is less than 0, then let's set div x to be 100. So that will take care of that problem. And then the other problem here is where we need to still add in another value into that. So let's wrap it with some brackets, and then we'll subtract another 200. So I think we're ready to try that again. So let's make it big. And we hit start, and we don't see any of them, but they are on the page. When we go into the elements in the container, they're all located. And it looks like the numbers turned out better this time. So next lesson, we're ready for the animation.